Hey everyone, last video of the week. It should be short. We're going to talk about the use of line charts, which is what we want when we're trying to look at changes over time. So in the last video, we made two worksheets that had bar charts showing changes in greenhouse gas emissions. Well, not really changes, but levels in both 2019 and in 1990. And we could see then how the emissions changed, who was the largest emitter in each country. Another way to do that is potentially more useful is to use a line chart. And so I want to show you a couple of different ways to do that. So the first thing that I'm thinking about is just looking directly at what are global greenhouse gas emissions over time. So I'll call this one carbon dioxide emissions, global CO2 emissions, and we're going to go 1919 to 2019. I'm just going to cover that 100-year period. So to do that, I need to look at emissions by country. Emissions, ignore me, don't really ignore me, but kind of ignore me, by year. There we go. No entity needed. Quite simple. Annual carbon dioxide emissions by year. Here we've got sum, and that's adding them up by each country, as opposed to average, which would be the country average. So if we want to see how many tons of carbon dioxide are being put into the atmosphere, this is the chart to do it. So one of the things that we noticed before is that although the data stretches back to 1750, we don't have data on most countries until well in the 20th century. So let's add a filter here to year, and let's have our filter reflect the fact that we want to look at the years from 1919 to 2019. And we can see here that there's an existence. I mean, you can see the trend between 1919 and 1945, but it's in the post-war period that the pace of increase in emissions begins to really rise. So that's nice. I mean, not nice that there's emissions, but it's nice that it's that easy to make a chart that shows those emissions. Another chart that we might want to make is one that breaks that down by country or region. Right? We saw when we made that tree map some evidence that China is the pace of increase in greenhouse gas emissions is faster in China than in the US. But what other trends are there? So to do this, we're going to rely on getting some more detail. And we want detail by entity. So I'm going to drag entity, and it's going to show that we've got detail by entity. I don't want every single entity, and I would like, a key or something. So when you're doing something like this, I would focus on no more than 7 lines, and you don't want lines that are really close together. So I'm going to drag entity and pull it into filters, and then we're going to do the same sort of thing. But let's go kind of by continent or region. So let's look at North America. Oops, pardon me. First I'm going to start by selecting none of them, then I'm going to add some. So North America, and I want all of North America, including the USA. And then I want to take a look at Asia. And then I want to take a look at Europe. And I'm going to take a look at the entirety of Europe. And then let's take a look at Oceania, which is the part of the world that contains the countries of Australia, New Zealand, and the other Pacific islands. Let's take a look at South America. And then let's take a look at Africa. Then I'm going to click OK. And I also would like to add a little bit of color, so I'm going to take entity and drag it into color. Now I've got all of the regions, each one with their own unique color, and I'm looking at changes in emissions over time. And the pattern that we saw when we made that original tree map that China and to a lesser extent India, if you explored around, those countries are rapidly increasing their greenhouse gas emissions on an annual basis. And we can see that here in this line for Asia, which includes both India and China in our data set. And after about 1992, the Asian countries produced more greenhouse gas emissions than North America and Europe, actually more than North America and Europe combined. The advanced countries of North America and Europe actually, look in Europe, following 1990, they experienced a pronounced and continued decrease in their production of greenhouse gas emissions, or at least carbon dioxide. And in North America, the rate of growth leveled off, and we actually, since 2009, the recession, we've seen a leveling off and decline in greenhouse emissions even in North America. Down here in our other lines, we've got Africa. The countries of Africa they're on a slow and steady increase, but they still, are producing roughly a third of what's being produced in Europe. Same with South America and Oceania. So our big producers of greenhouse gas are the developed economies of North America and Europe and the growing economies of Asia. That's a line chart. Isn't that handy? And it's amazing how easy it is. Any of you who have been doing these things in Excel are probably so relieved, wondering why we ever had to learn Excel. It had its place. All right. Talk to you later. Happy calculating.